Math of an oil spill, there are going to be high concentrations of H2S gases, very, very flammable environments. If you inhale it, you could die. Wildlife will die. But as soon as the bacteria um, begins to do its job within a
Consume it,
couple
yeah.
consume it within a couple within a short time, probably with less than a year, the dangers of any type of gas inhalation dangers will subside. It will be unsightly probably for a number of years.
And
Could be 5
people
or 10 years.
and people can remember the Exxon Valdez, et cetera. So,
Sure.
and in our show on RBN, you discussed how the ocean floor pours out some 12 million gallons or barrels of oil a day.
I've heard that some estimates in the Gulf of Mexico that there's well over 1 million barrels of oil being spilled every day just through natural fissures. But we're talking about depths of 3, 4, 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet. At those depths, the water pressure is so immense and it's so cold that oil never reaches the surface. As soon, because it's hot and it's reaching an environment where the temperature is anywhere between 35 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And
It would
oil doesn't
obviously
like
be
cold temperature very
it would
much.
obviously be warming that temperature though some, wouldn't it?
Well, it's not, these aren't volcanic vents, so immediately around, it's coming out hot, obviously. But once the cold air and the cold water and the pressure, it turns it sort of into sort of like a cottage cheese consistency, and it'll just settle to the bottom. And there, bacteria will go upon its settlement, will bury it, and it sort of recycles itself as it begins to get buried. As it heats up, it reconstitutes. These are processes that take probably millions of years, cycles to complete. But oil's been spilling out of the Gulf of Mexico long before mankind discovered it.
All
It's one of
right.
the reasons why they have such great shrimp down there.
So this more recent spill that wiped out these shrimpers along the Louisiana coast, etc. In the next 5 to 10 years, we can expect them to have a major boom. Is that what you're saying?
We very well could. In fact, it is coming back now. The only thing that
So
concerned me
so
about the
so
BP oil spill, that the problem is, I think BP or the engineers, um, I think they were too aggressive in spraying Corexit on the water. Now, who knows how much? There are the conspiracy theorists out there who said that they were spraying vast sums of Corexit. Corexit's one of these petrochemicals that's supposed to break down the oil, but unfortunately, it's going to kill the bacteria that breaks it down, and it's going to kill anything else that consumes it. But there hasn't been any evidence of a Corexit die-off in the Gulf of Mexico, so I think maybe all of that was just a bunch of propaganda, that they probably didn't use nearly as much. They might have just used what they call digesters. They're already, it's already the enzymes and bacteria, and they spray that on top of oil to accelerate the bacterial microbes doing their job. It speeds up the process quite a bit. And that stuff is environmentally safe. There's no problem with it. But I think, who knows? Corexit is a really bad substance. They could just leave the oil alone and skim it, capture it. There are some great technologies to
and
be able
probably
to
do less damage than spraying extreme petrochemicals on it that way as well, right?
exactly. There are far more environmentally friendly ways. Just letting it be it's oil. It's not processed. It's coming out of the ground. Yes, it's unsightly, but look, I think if we look at like the BP oil spill, it was not nearly as severe as we were all told. There was very little in the way of shoreline damage caused by that incident. So could it have been a fake event? Very possible. Could it have been an attempt by the oil industry to try and create a shortage, knowing that they needed to get oil up in price? When did that happen? 2010?
Something like that,
Five
yeah.
years ago? Okay. 2010, we weren't we weren't at $100 a barrel for. That could have been. I have to go back and look at March of 2010 when that happened. But there are many people at play in the oil industry that they need to keep oil above $80 a barrel. If they have any long-term chance of being able to maintain their businesses and moving forward, just with the cost of their operations, and particularly with offshore, because these companies they've invested billions of dollars into these offshore platforms and the technologies. This has put millions of people around the world to work in developing these things. And I do believe they would like to keep the system going as long as they can. But as I say now, I think we're seeing these things today, and even a lot of this debate today, because I mean, the oil industry is also very good at creating its own duality, trying to control both sides of the argument.
Right, and we discussed that before, and I had read, in fact, I've got it up right here, a quote from my article, Spies in Academic Clothing, and this is from Stephen Hager, the former chief editor of High Times Magazine, and he says, "But that's the way the spooks play their games. If there's going to be a social movement against whatever you're doing, it's best if you secretly create and orchestrate that movement against yourself right away so that it never does any unintended damage to your personal fortunes."
And I think that's been the mantra of the oil industry for the last 100 years.
So they are basically creating all of these hippie movements against them with all of this false peak oil information, etc., to drive their profits. So the hippies and the protesters and the peak oil people, etc., they all play right into that.
Correct. Everybody falls right into the line. You know, there was a great movie that was produced for HBO. It had Matt Damon in it, where he plays a landman. Landman is a person who goes around to people who own farms. It takes place in rural Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, and the fracking companies would send landmen out to offer people royalties for producing oil and gas on their land. And of course, this movie was about how bad the oil industry was. But the radical hippie guy character that was brought in to sort of juxtapose, the main character's role wasn't an organic, protester, Greenpeace kind of guy. He worked for the oil company that the Matt Damon character worked for, and that was exposed at the end. Like, do you think we wouldn't control
What's the
both
name of
sides
that
this?
film? Do you remember?
I can't remember, but if you Google Matt Damon, landman Matt Damon, I have the screen closed. I don't have my mouse here with my computer here in the basement. I could do it, but
Promised Land?
That's it, Promised Land.
Okay.
Again, this is just another one of these movies, but it's fascinating to watch because I was shocked when I saw it, to be honest with you, about at the end when they exposed this is exactly what this industry has been doing. They are almost practicing military intelligence,
right,
in the way they operate today. And
almost to the level that we've been exposing elsewhere in Gnostic Media for the last several years.
exactly. And they probably take it on the same people that were consultants.
No,
US
I mean,
government.
because everybody essentially would be relaxed. I mean, it's like, okay, so the real renewable energy then is oil. And so as long as they keep the scarcity thing up and we're all on the end of the industrial age and everything's just about to collapse because there's no more oil while there are tankers everywhere floating that are full and can't put it anywhere, then it keeps their prices high and they can keep their illusion going. All right,
In the Green River Basin of Colorado and Utah, there's over 3 trillion barrels of oil. 3 trillion. We don't have an oil shortage. And the other renewable energy is nuclear, which, by the way, isn't dangerous. It's why it's been demonized.
Well, and we do have a couple of issues that happen with that, and we need to do a whole show just on that as well. And I was going to try to save some of the nuclear stuff till the end. So, apparently the main damage is, with oil spills, the immediate cost is immediate animal life, the animals that get drowned in the oil that humans can't physically get to bathe them in a solution to get the oil off.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one would be industry, etc., that's wiped out immediately, like the shrimp industry. But then, the animal life comes back in 5 or 10 years, and the shrimp industry comes back in 5 or 10 years. So essentially, right. So essentially, everybody should be, buying stock in shrimp fisheries right now.
It might be a good time to do that, but
all right,
yes, it's an easy.
And you're not, and like, we discussed in the last show, you're not suggesting we be bad stewards of the earth and be careless, etc. You're for and you're protecting the environment.
Absolutely.
And I think you and I discussed before that you were against the use of petrochemicals that really are what make the mess out of the oil industry.
Mm-hmm. I say if you're going to use chemicals that are born of nature, a lot of petrochemicals are, but if the blending of certain chemicals creates a super toxic side effect, those chemicals should not be used. There are natural alternatives for almost everything. For instance, we talk about the cleaning of birds, which you had mentioned with oil spills.
Right.
A lot of that is just oil. It's soaps that are made from polymers and orange peels. So real simple. It breaks the oil apart. It keeps it from sticking, and it cleans everything up. That stuff cleans up oil spills too, and it's entirely non-toxic. So those again are
and everything smells good.
And everything smells like orange peels.
All right. So what is vulcanization?
Vulcanization is,
and just try to explain it the best you can. Like I said, I'm going to have Sean on to provide a lot more of the geophysics part of this stuff, but just as best you can on these parts.
I think whatever it is we live on, okay, whatever it is we live on, it's growing. Maybe it's a living thing, and part of that growth is the pressure, expansion, contraction, and the heat that's created. There's that massive heat produces various liquids that come together under the right circumstances that are pushed up to the surface. Many of those chambers are created by the lava flows themselves, and they make their way to the surface. And it's your friend's probably the better person to talk to in a geoscience way about it, but I do know they're natural. Nobody could say that, well, because of mankind's activity here, that we're causing volcanic eruptions. That would be, I think, a bit silly,
right,
for them to say. Though I'm sure they would like to. I'm sure it's been suggested to me. So can we blame volcanoes on mankind? Like, nah, I don't think we can push that far.
Now, what is abiotic oil?
Abiotic oil is the oil that is formed deep in the earth.
And
it's the
juxtaposed theory, which fossil fuels have been, that theory has been pretty well disproved. But
the abiotic oil is just what we've been talking about. That's just
right,
a name
exactly.
that was given to
everything that we're discussing right now is abiotic, bio meaning life. So it's not created from old life matter. Essentially, it's not. It's not dinosaurs. So, and somebody just to follow up on this, somebody asked this question: if oil is made from decomposed dinosaurs and plastic is made from oil, are plastic dinosaurs made from real dinosaurs?
I have heard that. Somebody asked that one time before. That is very funny. Very
So, or does this question use a number of false presumptions? And obviously, it does use a number of false presumptions, because if this is a uh, product of vulcanization, which it appears to be, which it appears that is just part of the Earth itself and not part of, oh well, there were only so many dinosaurs that lived, so we're going to run out of fuel in the next 6 weeks here. Then it changes all of the presumptions that we base such questions on, even if they're funny. But apparently, no, a plastic dinosaur is not made from a decomposed old dinosaur. It's actually made, but that's not to say that dinosaurs didn't get stuck in the tar.
I've asked a couple of my geologist friends some questions like, can you give me an answer why the oceans are salty? Is there, like, if I take salt and I put it in a glass with water, yes, there'll be a bit of dilution, but a lot of the salt will stay. Where is that salt coming from? If the earth is covered, if 70-80% of the surface is covered with water, where's that salt coming from?
Right.
How did it get there?
Well, and with that question, with that idea or issue, where did the story of fossil fuels originate?
Again, that was John D. Rockefeller, and there was a conference in Geneva, Switzerland in I think it was 1892, and he had lobbied for. This was a scientific conference, and they were to discuss how they were going to classify oil. And he had lobbied with them, probably through major contributions, to have it listed as a fossil fuel, so that scarcity, meaning that it's only produced in limited amounts, it's based on decaying biomatter.
And what's the poor oil company? I think back east, isn't it, in New Jersey, that's going to use the dinosaur for their logo? I mean, they're screwed now. Once this gets out,
that was actually an Oklahoma company called Sinclair Oil.
I thought it. Yeah, I was just going to say Cinco. So, and they've got. I know they've got gas stations all over New Jersey with that, fossil fuel dinosaur logo. So, I mean, companies like that, they're going to go the way of the dinosaur now with this. All right, so
and they're just desperate and have been desperate, obviously, for 120 years, to find a way to convince the public that it is scarce. And even today, where we say, well, there's no oil here. It's in the Northeast. Oh, there's no oil for a couple hundred miles. Pennsylvania, there's oil, but in parts of New Jersey where I'm at, there's none. No, there's oil here too. You just got to go a little deeper to find it.
You gotta dig under all those oil tanks in Newark.
Yeah. Probably would have to go down 25, 30,000 feet to hit oil here.
Oh yeah, I was thinking more like 20 or 30 feet underneath. I'm just making a joke though, but parts of Newark are pretty dirty.
I was told by a geologist friend of mine up in Canada that there is a formation that is 300 miles wide and over 1,200 miles long, that runs from almost Alaska all the way down into Montana. That there's probably enough oil in that one formation alone that we could have all of our current worldwide needs could be met with that one oil formation for the next 200 or 300 years. But it's deep. It's over 35,000 feet below the surface. And that it's a challenge in deep drilling. It's a challenge. But again, these are because you're dealing with tremendous amount of heat, pressure, and forces down there when you get that deep. So, and there are also some fears that if you drill that far, that deep, you might open up a volcanic, event where there wasn't a volcano before and now you've created one. Because if you've got tremendous amounts of gases and pressures down there, it's, it's going to be like popping a balloon. That pressure is going to release. And that could be a very dangerous, unfortunate thing. But the Russians have been down, as my understanding, they've been down as far as 35,000 feet. And they've told the whole world that doesn't matter where you drill. If you go deep enough, you'll hit oil. So.
All right. So, yeah, 35,000 feet down. Wow. That's deep.
7 miles.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
really, really deep. And
I live about 30, 40 miles from the peak of Mount San Gorgonio, and that's 11.5. So that's threefold that peak is what I was just, trying to put that in my mind. So, when you're flying at 35,000 feet in an airplane and looking down at ocean level, that's how deep.
That's how deep they have to go to hit mass amounts of oil.
All right, so let's switch gears for a little bit, and let's go into renewable energy creation and the mining of rare earths.
Now, this is when people talk about pollution creating.
This is
the
it.
king. This is perhaps the most
so people
world.
with their smartphones, their Toyota Priuses with their 80,000 mile batteries. I mean, they're the Toyota Prius. Excuse me. Boy, if I get stuck behind another fool driving 50 in the left lane, in one of those, boy, staring at their little thing with a whole traffic jam. Literally every time I get on the damn freeway, I get stuck with somebody in the left lane driving 50 in a damn Prius.
To see it for themselves, people just go to YouTube and just type in toxic lakes in China and the vast areas that have been utterly destroyed.
So while they think that they're eliminating their carbon footprint and they're, by gentle stepping with their Birkenstocks, they are saving the planet and causing less pollution when in fact they're causing far more. And if I recall correctly, the most fuel efficient car from factory to end of life was a Jeep CJ7 with a Chevy V8 engine in it. Is that correct?
I think I've heard that before.
And again, I've not checked that myself, so people don't quote me on that. But because the Jeep has obviously been made for about, 70, 80 some years now, and the production line of them and the Wranglers has been so continuous with so few changes for so many decades. And, obviously back in the CJ days, AMC didn't make good engines. So that's why the Chevy engine. But, apparently this from factory to junkyard was one of the most efficient vehicles put out as far as full, the total amount of pollution.
Yeah. No, the amount of pollution that's created by these green technologies, people just don't want to hear it. Also, the amount of energy that it takes to produce the rare earth minerals and the actual green technologies themselves, like the solar panels and the windmills, it takes more energy from oil to produce and do the rare earth mining, to manufacture, produce, ship, and sell the solar panels and windmills than the energy that those items will ever produce. Okay, for instance, let's say, to give you a solar panel might take or might produce through its life, let's say, and I don't know the exact figure, but let's say it's 1,000 BTUs of energy are going to be created by one solar panel in its lifespan. Well, they don't tell you that to create that solar panel, so you can have it on your roof, took 1,200 BTUs from oil. So you're
All
in a
right,
net
so let me
loss of
ask you
200
somebody.
BTUs.
Now, somebody, let's say my co author on the Manufacturing the Deadhead article, and he's my co host for my other show on the CCN network, Unspun. Now, he's got a Nissan Leaf, and he's got solar panels on the roof, and he doesn't buy gas. And he
Hmm.
says, I haven't, needed to buy fuel for 3-4 years now. So,
Oh, good.
to him, he's totally off of the system. What can you say to that?
It's good. I have no problem with people. I'm not saying that we shouldn't produce it. There are certain people that need to be off grid. Say they live in an area where they're away from electric power lines. It's just not
But
possible to get
now,
it to them.
but if we were, to go with this idea of these people that want to create solar panels for the highways of America, for instance, they want to turn the actual highways into solar panels. The amount of petroleum used to mine all of that would probably far exceed any benefit of the solar panels. And then there would be the upkeep of those solar panels, every 10 or 15 years or whatever.
And more.
And more. So these and not only that, but these things being in the sun all of the time would break down.
Making roads out of solar panels, which is just glass. Talk about what that those the trucks would wear that glass down fast. And as soon as they got wet, it would be like driving on ice, regardless of the time of year. So it's a bad idea. It'll never work. They'll produce a few sidewalks out of it and malls, and you can put them on your roof and have those are fine. I'm all for, people being able to,
So you
people
just think there
developing
should
these
be a fine
technologies.
line or a fine balance, essentially, between the production of solar panels and how much advertising of this is a supposedly clean energy source versus the real damage and production that's done behind it. I mean, all of this needs full disclosure, in other words. And hey, you're creating this much pollution by buying these solar panels.
Hmm.
And, so you're going to need to run these solar panels for the next 35 or 40 years to break even on the pollution level.
Exactly. And they're very expensive. Look, we just need to stop. We need to stop with all of this propaganda nonsense. Oil industry needs to step up and stop it. They need to stop falling into this. Of course, this is going to happen because this was part of corporate governance and the things that have gone on, and they're too far gone, I think, to help. But somebody's got to stand up and say, look, this oil is a natural substance. Yes, it will build you solar panels. It can build you windmills. But let's not kid ourselves. We're using more oil to create those things than the energy those items produce. And they should only be built for the specific areas where they would be needed. But to try to provide or meet the energy needs of our society with these harebrained ideas is nothing more than this is all make work projects.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
all it is. They're just trying to
Keep
create a
everybody,
new industry.
and to give the hippies work that they can feel proud about, essentially, while they're being misled.
Exactly.
All
And if they
right.
would just be honest, I
Well,
think
sure,
it's
and,
fine.
and we discussed biofuels before. So, and you said you agree with hemp and biofuels to an extent. What about corn and soy, et cetera, and all these GMO crops out there?
Well, I think that I think this GMO stuff is, who knows if we're getting the truth on that from the anti-GMO crowd.
Yeah, how much of that is them paying for their own damage control as well? But
Exactly. Like,
uh,
is it harmful element? I mean, Alex Jones saying that they're blending jellyfish with tomatoes. If that's true, probably a bad thing. But if it's just the blending of two different varieties of tomatoes and coming up with a new hybrid species, how is that harmful? How is that dangerous to the
sure. I mean,
scientists?
obviously, when a man and woman come together, they create a new hybrid of human being every time, and
Exactly.
All
So
right, so
I don't know if that's necessarily the bad thing. Making fuel out of a food source, to me, that's the height of idiocracy. Like, why would you do that? There's no need for that. Really, We can make it out of hemp. Industrial hemp. Why we're not growing it again? It's
Well, and
partly
I
because of
was
the
the
petrochemical.
I was the Inland Empire coordinator for the California Hemp Initiative, and then of course George Soros came in and funded now admitted CIA agent Dennis Peron's Prop 215 campaign that immediately wiped out the California Hemp Initiative. And I remember Jack Herer being furious about all of this, and he told me exactly what was going to go down and how it was going to go down. And 20 some years later, I look, it was what, 96 that the hemp initiative, the Prop 215, so 19 years since that passed. And everything is exactly how he said it would go down. That we wouldn't be using hemp, that people would still be going to jail for quote unquote illegal use, while the other half of the population can use it legally, etc. And it got nowhere. So essentially, Soros and Dennis Peron killed the hemp initiative and dazzled everybody with medical marijuana to keep them, keep them high and content, so that they didn't realize what really took place there. That's, at least in my opinion, what appears to have taken place. And then we saw Dennis Peron also running for governor of California against Dan Lundgren at the same time. All right. Do you have something to add to that?
No, it's exasperating.
Right.
What's been going on with that?
Let's get into new engine technology and efficiency, because obviously this is another problem for the oil companies as well. And as I mentioned in our interview on RBN, I've had a number of Jeeps. I live in the mountains, and it's either pretty much everybody drives a Jeep or a Subaru. Those are your primary choices. And since my first Jeep, the efficiency has more than doubled, almost tripled, and the horsepower output gone up maybe 3 or 4 times since my first Jeep Wrangler. And just in the last 10 years, they've moved away from a 196 horsepower 4-liter engine to a 3.6 300 horsepower engine that gets like 5 or 6 miles a gallon more than the 4-liter did. And so you're getting far more horsepower, far more efficiency, far nicer ride. Now, a lot of these 4-bangers are putting out the horsepower that the V8s were, 10 or 20 years ago. So where does that leave where does all of this new technology, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Where do we balance the technology versus the stifling of oil and of human life?
Well, I think that if we see oil stay low for longer, and it could stay low for years to come if we don't have a war, then we're going to see the introduction of bigger cars, so that we can get consuming the gasoline.
So we're gonna see all of these monster trucks that we saw in the late 2000s that everybody ragged on, that completely disappeared, and they were traded in for Toyota Priuses. We're gonna see the return of those, essentially, right?
Yes.
And then that big 3-axle Dodge truck that they never rolled out in the 90s, they're probably going to finally roll that sucker out, etc.
Might as well get people buying as much as they can.
Motor homes, everything else. Interesting. All right. So, and then, of course, all of that stuff is going to have other pollution. But, what about, and then you have all the synthetic fibers that go into carpets and into upholstery and into all of this stuff. So isn't that where the real problem repeatedly comes in with the pollution, is the petrochemicals and this sort of stuff?
Yeah, those are problems too, particularly with in the event of fires. They give off very poisonous gases, stuff. So yeah, there are problems with that. I would agree with you.
All right. The environmental religion to stop producing. What do you have to say about that? The Agenda 21, communist, communitarian, environmentalist agenda.
I'm totally opposed.
What can you tell us about it, though, other than just that? Yeah, obviously they're creating a new Earth religion and selling the idea of how petroleum is bad and how carbon is bad when it's actually the foundation of all life.
Hmm.
But, and they've, just like all the Satanists always do in the Kabbalists, they flip everything upside down. But, what can you tell us? Anything that you can tell us about the inside machinations of that?
Other than what we've already mentioned before, is that I think a lot of the machinations that you're discussing are being brought up. The green religions are being capitalized and financed by the oil, many of them by the oil industry itself.
And I think Soros is behind a lot of, it appears to be behind a lot of the funding of these Earth religions as well.
Sure. Well, he's trying to satisfy some
So,
geopolitical.
and the ultimate Earth religion, then, apparently, from what you're saying and from what Sean's paper shows that he sent me earlier today, is the real Earth religion, then, is apparently using lots of oil and natural resources. Now, Sean seemed to think that we should be using ethanol. What do you think of that as opposed to petroleum in its more natural state?
You get more of a efficiency burn of the fuel, particularly with the new technologies now, like you're discussing, and just in the Jeeps. It's the burn rate, how much of the gases can be burned off in the combustion chamber of the engine.
So
Today's
what is